Welcome to this edition of Valor Media. This is episode number 53 for February 8th, 2021. I'm your host, Mark Appenzeller, and I would like to welcome you to our one-year anniversary episode of Valor Media. I cannot believe it. 1 year ago today was the debut of Valor Media, our very first episode, and here we are kicking off year 2. And let me just tell you, that's a pretty exciting place to be. And it's been quite a journey over the past year. And I'm sure we're all in the same boat. There were so many things that we faced in 2020 and so many residual challenges and pressures and things to figure out that have crept over into 2021 that really these last 12 months have been a blur. And it's a weird feeling because I remember when we recorded that very first episode, and in some ways it seems like it was 3 days ago. In other aspects, it seems like it was 5 years ago. And I think part of it, too, is that when you do something week after week, when you're constantly engaged and immersed in something, it's changing, it's growing, it's morphing, but you don't always appreciate that because you're too immersed. You can't be objective because you're right down there in the weeds. I kind of liken it to being married to somebody, and you and your spouse see each other every day. You're both aging, you're both changing, but sometimes it's hard to notice the changes because you see them happen so gradually. And it's not until you look at an old picture of yourselves that it suddenly hits you, wow, we look different from what we used to. That's kind of what has happened with Valor Media. I haven't really paid attention to how much we've changed week to week because we're immersed in the content creation and the editing and the publishing and getting everything out there. And so that routine is something that we focus very much on. It's not till I really go back and listen to some of those earliest episodes that I see, wow, we've come quite a long way in a year. And if you go back and listen to that episode number 1, you can tell we were newbies. We were definitely just getting our feet wet. And we weren't really sure what direction Valor Media would go in. I shared in an installment a couple of months ago about how Lori Riston had initially come up with the concept that really became the platform for us to do the Valor Media podcast. Several years back, she had written a proposal for a radio show. And when she showed it to me, I thought it was just so incredible. It was such an innovative idea to do a talk radio show that would also be a call-in, and it would essentially be us talking about what we do at the Valor Crisis and Training Center. And the purpose of the conversations on the show would be to provide insight to people about what causes someone to get into a crisis situation. So Lori envisioned the show as being something that would kind of unravel that. It would unpack that journey that sometimes people don't notice while they're on it, that takes them from a place of maybe just getting by to suddenly not being able to get by. And there's so much that we do at the Valor Crisis and Training Center to interact with people that we wanted to be able to share that in that kind of a format because it really seemed like a natural extension of what we were already doing. But she couldn't find a radio station that would be willing to go with that concept. And I really thought that was a shame because it was such a great idea. And I didn't want to just see it fall by the wayside. So Lori and I started talking about the ideas of maybe translating that concept into the realm of a weekly podcast. And that is where Valor Media was born. Now, it was really a big commitment for us because neither one of us had ever done a podcast before. Now, I had pretty extensive experience with recording and editing audio, so I knew how to do the technical end of it, but it was really a big commitment to go out there and to announce, particularly in that very first episode a year ago, that this would be a weekly podcast because we were publicly committing ourselves to creating content on a weekly basis. And every Monday, through every challenge that we faced in 2020, all the way up to right now, we've never missed a weekly podcast being put up. Every week we have released an episode. So very much Valor Media has given us the ability to kind of bring those concepts Lori had envisioned for the radio show into this format. But we've even been able to do something beyond what we would have done in just that realm of sharing how to come out of a personal crisis situation. We've also, over the years at the Valor Crisis and Training Center, gained a tremendous knowledge base. Being a small nonprofit and having to learn how to make the most out of every operating dollar has really given us some good insight that we don't want to just keep for ourselves. We want to be able to share it with other organizations. We want to be able to give others some perspective from what we've gone through to say, hey, you know what? We went down this particular road and it really didn't work, so you don't have to do that. Here's a better way to do it. And so the Valor Media podcast, really from its inception, was split into two different series. And one of them is called Crisis to Thriving. And that's the one that's centered around helping individuals come out of a crisis situation. It's about your own personal growth. And because everything we do at Valor is centered around presenting the gospel of Jesus Christ in ways that really connect in just daily life, it's also that idea of recognizing that only Jesus can get you out of crisis. We're all in crisis. It doesn't have to be a financial distress. We all have something broken in our lives, and Jesus is the answer for whatever is broken. So the Crisis to Thriving series focuses on that. The other half of the coin is Valor XL, which touches on that idea that I was talking about with this knowledge base that we've built up. We want to be able to take all the things that we've learned, sometimes the hard way, and be able to disseminate that so that other agencies and other organizations can plug that into whatever it is that they're doing and hopefully be blessed by it. Well, the interesting thing is, in the course of this last year, the Lord kind of took Valor Media in directions that we never would have thought possible. We had no idea that the influence of the podcast would go so far beyond our little geographical area. And just to give you a brief recap, we're located in a small city in western Maryland, and we're in a little corner of the state where we're very close to Pennsylvania, we're very close to West Virginia, and Virginia is just a little bit farther away. So when we started the podcast, we kind of envisioned our sphere of influence as being just in that little quad state area. We thought it would primarily be in our corner of Maryland, and we just sort of left it at that. But what was really fascinating was even early on, last spring, just a few episodes in, it seems, we began to see that our influence was moving outside of our little geographical realm. And over the course of that year, we really saw a very diverse audience, and amazingly enough, we saw a worldwide audience. Now, just within the United States itself, in the course of this year that we have been doing the Valor Media podcast, we've had listeners from Maryland, Virginia, Pennsylvania, California, North Carolina, Michigan, Texas, Washington, D.C., Delaware, Ohio, Iowa, Massachusetts, New York, Tennessee, Washington, and West Virginia. Now, I don't really know the specifics of this. I'm not sure what all this encompasses, but we've had listeners whose origin was described as being U.S. minor outlying islands. So that's intriguing. We have had listeners from Canada, from Ontario, and even beyond the boundaries of the United States and Canada. We've had listeners from Ukraine, Ireland, Russia, Belgium, India, Malawi, and Germany. And that's pretty incredible. I find that just mind-blowing because, again, when we started a year ago, we thought, well, we'll probably just appeal to a local community. But we have literally had a global influence in the course of that year. And as I said before, we don't consistently have listeners from all those places, but for some reason, we have attracted listeners in those different places. So this tiny little Christian nonprofit in a small city in the western part of Maryland has literally been able to go out and touch the world. Now, the reason why I wanted to share that with you today is because that to me is a really exciting concept. And maybe you aren't interested in doing a podcast. Maybe you're not interested in going out and having a global influence. But I wanted to encourage you, whatever you do in your life, whether it's just living your daily existence, just going through whatever you would consider your routine, or really putting your attention and your talents and energies toward creating something new. Never underestimate the sphere of your influence. Don't ever say, well, it's just me, because we kind of said that a year ago. Well, it's just us. I have no idea how people in Russia and Ireland and India ever found us, but they did. And the interesting thing is that we thought we were sharing things that might be a blessing or an encouragement to somebody who lives 10 miles away. We never dreamed that we could be influencing somebody who lives 10,000 miles away. So don't ever sell yourself short, and recognize, particularly if you give your life to Jesus Christ and you're following Him and you're allowing Him to show you what He wants to do with the gifts and the abilities and the talents that He's put in your heart, then you have no idea where He's going to take you. And I'm excited because we're just getting started. We have big plans. We're not making plans outside of the scope of what we feel the Lord wants us to do, but He continues to take what we do and do even more with it. And He'll do the same for you in whatever it is that you're pursuing. And there are two simple scriptures that I want to leave with you as an encouragement in this particular aspect, and they both come from the book of Proverbs. And you hear slightly different translations of these, but they basically both touch on that idea of don't sell yourself short, and don't think that your little plans are for little things. God can take your little plans, put the breath of His Spirit in them, and make them go places you would have never thought possible. In Proverbs 16, verse 9, it says, "In their heart, human beings plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps." And Proverbs chapter 19, verse 21 says, "Many are the plans in a human heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails." So I want to encourage you, for whatever you're doing in your life, remember that only in Jesus Christ will you ever find your real purpose, your full potential. Only in Jesus Christ will you ever come from crisis into thriving, because He came that you might have life and have it more abundantly. So I want to personally thank everyone who has come along with us at Valor Media on this journey through our first year. Like I said, we're just getting started. I can't wait to see what the Lord does next. I can't wait to see where we go from here. And where I'd like to go from here is to introduce you to Valor Ministries Executive Director, Lori Riston, and let her share her own take on where we've come from, where we're going, and why, with Jesus Christ, the best is always yet to come.
Thanks, Mark. I agree. I can't wait either. It's just so amazing to witness all that God has done with our efforts over the past year, and I'm really excited about what the future may hold. Now, I don't pretend to know exactly what that future may look like, but I do know this: God has a plan. And while we may not be able to see it completely yet, we can trust that whatever it is, it's going to be good. Now, I say that because God's word says so. In Romans 8, verse 28, it says, "And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love Him and who have been called according to His purpose." But I can also say that because, you see, I've experienced it. God is always doing something in our lives, and He always has our best interests at heart. What has been so great for me over the past year is that I've been able to learn so much about doing video production and graphic design work. And I never thought I could do that, but I am, and I'm doing it well. Oh, sure, I have a lot more to learn, but that's okay. I don't mind. I look forward to it, really, because each week I have learned something new, and each week I grow stronger in my abilities. That really means something to me, because I've wanted to do this kind of work for a very long time. Now, when I say a long time, I mean a long time, since I was about 17 years old. And back then, the only goals I had for my life were to join the Air Force and have a family one day. But unfortunately, I didn't have the courage to sign the enlistment paperwork. So instead, I changed my focus to attending a nearby college. Unfortunately, it was pretty late in the school year, so I didn't have much time to think about what major to choose. So I took one that seemed interesting and something I would enjoy. Now, without much thought, I signed up for a degree in radio, TV, and film. Now, back then, as you've heard me say many times, I was living in crisis. And I was living in crisis pretty much since the day I was born. I didn't have much self-esteem, and all I really wanted was to feel loved. And when I started college, I had just begun dating my boyfriend at that time, and it was really difficult to be away from him, even though I was only about 25 miles away. So after a little over 5 weeks of college, I dropped out to come back home. Since I didn't have any real job skills at that time, the first job I was able to get was at a restaurant. And from there, I worked as a typist at a book publishing house and then later at a crane manufacturing company. Once I got married and had children, I started working part-time in the restaurant business again, but I always knew that I was destined for something more. Again, I really couldn't verbalize what that something more was because I didn't have a lot of self-worth and I really didn't have any dreams within my heart. I just knew that I couldn't go back to college because I had young kids. So instead, I decided to go into real estate as a stepping stone towards a better future. It wasn't long before I began to realize that I was smart and I was capable of being successful, but I still didn't have the right focus. As usual, I was too busy dealing with dysfunction and chaos to really thrive. Soon, other job offers came my way, and I moved to another town for even more career opportunities. I grew even more in my self-esteem, and I also became more successful. I kept moving higher and higher up the corporate ladder until my last job as a regional sales manager for an oil company. And all along the way, God was developing in me the talents and the abilities that I needed to have for the day when I would finally surrender and give my heart to Christ. Once I did, God transformed me into a new person, and under His leadership and guidance, I began to flourish like never before. The once scared, confused, and insecure little girl became a strong, independent, and prosperous woman. I'm now able to tackle any setback that comes my way because I've learned that I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Now, why is this so important in light of our 1-year podcast anniversary? Well, because you see, God knew my heart even more than I did. And all those years ago, when I didn't have a clue about what I wanted to do with my life, God placed a little spark within me to sign up for that radio, TV, and film major. And I didn't know how important that was then, but He sure did. And even though it took 38 years to ultimately realize this amazing plan He had for me, He never failed to make sure I ended up exactly where I needed to be at just the right time. 38 years is a long time. But what it proves to me is that when God plants a dream or a desire within your heart, He will make sure it comes to pass no matter how long it takes. No matter how many times we decide to go in another direction or make stupid choices that cause delays, God's will ultimately succeeds. And what Mark said earlier is so true. We can make many plans, but the Lord's purpose will always prevail. Little did I know then how much I would love doing this type of work. It brings me such joy, and I just can't wait to create something that will inspire others to know Jesus and His love for them. I feel like I'm living my true purpose, and I really believe there's even more to come. That's why I look forward to what's ahead. Now, you probably don't know this unless you've visited our Valor Ministries Facebook page, but our motto for 21 is moving on up. And I'm not talking about moving to a deluxe apartment in the sky like the Jeffersons. No, I'm talking about moving up to another level in our mission. And again, I don't pretend to know what that's going to look like. I just know that we have completed one season of ministry and we're now at a new level. We've graduated. God is taking all that we have learned in the last 12 years and He's propelling us into this next phase. What will we produce and what type of impact will we make? Well, that's not for me to know or to worry about. All we have to do is try our very best to obey where God is leading and look to Him to provide whatever it is that we're going to need along the way. You know, I tell this story all the time, but when we opened the Valor Crisis and Training Center, we didn't have a clue what God had in store for us. We just knew that He had something in mind. And about a year into it, we had grown so much that we had to take even more office space and hire more employees just to keep up with client demand. And I kept thinking about how far we had come over those first 5 years and was pondering in my heart about where we may be in another 5. It was then that I asked one of my coworkers, "What did we do to deserve all this?" And her answer was simply, "You obeyed." Well, she was right. God only asks us to obey, and He will work out every detail as we work towards the dreams and the desires we have within our hearts. It's easier said than done, but I've come to realize that if we trust in Him, we have nothing to worry about. We can have peace, we can have joy, and we can achieve anything that we set our minds to. If you're having trouble believing that, then maybe God wanted you to listen to this anniversary episode because He wants you to know that He is able to do above and beyond anything that you can ever ask or imagine. He wants you to reach that thriving life that we keep telling you about. Why not join us and enter this new level of living right this very moment? Now, if you don't know how to do that, or if you have questions about what that all means, we're here for you. All you have to do is contact us at info@thevalorcenter.org. We'll come into agreement with you that starting today, God is going to move you on up towards a better life. In the meantime, I encourage you to purchase my new book, You Were Made to Thrive, 7 Strategies to Move You from Crisis to Thriving. Now, people ask me all the time what they need to do in order to move past the negative circumstances in their lives towards the dreams that they have within their heart. Do you know what I tell them? I tell them the answers are within your grasp. All you need is the knowledge, a plan, and a little help. Unfortunately, most people just don't know where to find any of those. That's why today I'm offering you just that. Now, I can't come over to your house for an afternoon and teach you what I know, but I can give you the step-by-step plan that I've made available to you in my new book. And this book contains all of the ways I would advise you if I could meet with you and explain what works. Inside the book, I give you practical methods for transforming your life and teach you everything that I've learned. You can purchase the book through Amazon or at our website at www.valorexcel.com/products. Also, we'd love it if you would let us know what topics you'd like us to cover in these podcasts. If you have suggestions, all you have to do is email us at media@thevalorcenter.org and let us know what's important to you. Or you can just send a quick message and let us know how you found our podcast and where you're from. We'd love to get to know you, our listeners. Or if you'd prefer to get up-to-date information about Valor, you can connect with us on our websites at www.thevalorcenter.org or www.valorexcel.com. Or you can find us on Facebook at Valor Ministries or Valor Excel. Let us know you visited so we can stay connected. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Crisis to Thriving, this anniversary message. And if you did, would you consider financially supporting us in our efforts? Your generous donations are tax deductible, and they allow us to continue offering content like this. Please visit www.thevalorcenter.org/donate to give securely online. Or you can send a check or money order to Valor Ministries, 324 East Antietam Street, Suite 104, Hagerstown, Maryland, 21740. Lastly, I'd like to ask you to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Once you do, don't forget to hit that little bell so you'll be alerted to each new episode. Please help us get the word out. And again, I'd like to thank you for spending some time with us on our first anniversary podcast, and I hope you'll come back again for next week's episode. Until then, remember this: you were made to thrive.